Hi, I'm Don Mooers, and welcome to Montgomery Week in Review. Elections matter. If you don't understand this concept, you only have to look at our neighbor, Virginia. Mariana Cordier, a local attorney, will tell us news about what happened in the Commonwealth, especially as they affect dreamers. We're in the middle, or the council is in the middle, of consideration of the operating budget for the coming year, and there is much interest about what could happen to the Board of Education's allotment. Jane DeWinter, who comments regularly for this program, is here to tell us all about this story. The May issue of the Beacon will include the first of 3 parts about housing, as well as the usual local news that you can, or the latest news, I should say, about our health. Stuart Rosenthal, editor and publisher of the Beacon, is here with the details. Jubilee, as well as other agencies that see to the health and well-being of disabled adults in our community, was most interested in the minimum wage bill in Annapolis this session. Tim Wiens, the executive director of Jubilee, is here to explain as well as tell us about a big event that's coming up just a week from now. Mariana, welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
I love that statement, elections matter.
Elections matter, proof is in the pudding.
Now, this is Virginia, the Commonwealth.
Well, right,
what happened?
the Attorney General.
Newly elected, I guess he was
newly
elected
elected,
in November,
it
right?
was very contested. I think they counted votes and everything. He has come out with he basically held a press conference and said that the state must honor the in-state tuition for Dreamers.
Okay.
It was stalled in the legislature because it was heavily, the Republican Party.
Right.
The Republican Party, though, I have to say, is very split on this issue.
But wait, let's start up here. Dreamer, what are we talking about here?
Dreamers are kids who were brought by their parents to the United States, and they're undocumented. They
Okay, so
don't
these
have
are
legal status here from other countries.
So this is Maryland took care of this.
Maryland took care of it by having passed the Dreamers Act. And lots of people confuse the issue thinking it's free tuition versus, paying tuition because, no, nobody goes to school for free. I don't know anybody does. This is about whether you pay in-state tuition or out-of-state tuition.
So we're talking about our kids, parents, families, they're paying taxes.
They're paying taxes. They satisfy residency requirements. I don't know specifically what the residency requirements are for Virginia. Virginia does have strict residency requirements overall because of the universities. The University of Virginia is a very sought-out university across the country and such. So yeah, you have to satisfy those, and you have to pay your taxes. But if you've done the two, whether you are you have a legal visa or a citizen or a resident, doesn't matter.
Okay.
If you're in the state and you've satisfied those requirements, you are entitled to be able to pay the in-state tuition rate.
So how many people are we talking about? What does the numbers look like for
They're
this?
estimating that it's approximately 8,000 students in the state.
So what you're saying is that the newly elected or recently elected Attorney General is basically going to circumvent any,
he took the bull by the horns.
any action by the
he
legislature.
took the bull by the horns and he said, okay, he did the same, he was very controversial also about the gay-lesbian marriage ban, and he said that was unconstitutional. And with this, with a flick of a pen, Attorney General's decision is that the state, in-state, or the state colleges and universities need to charge these folks in-state tuition.
Jane points out a very interesting difference between Virginia and Maryland on this, in that it passed the General Assembly, if I remember correctly, signed into law by the governor here in Maryland, and then a referendum came in to put it then on the ballot. So this was a long, drawn-out process in Maryland. And then just the stroke of a pen by the Attorney General. How can he do that?
Well, he has that ability to do that, but the legislature can respond and pass something that would either make it impossible or to follow in his footsteps. And the problem is that we have a presidential election coming up. And, the Republicans, and this is back to what I was saying originally, are really struggling within the party. Those who are running in a state that's purple, not blue and not red.
Which is Virginia, right?
Which is Virginia at this point because of Northern Virginia and the Richmond area and whatever. It really does affect who that candidate is going to be that's going to win. And so, immigrants vote, and lots of legally here, have their citizenship, can vote, are, watching this, and they're determining whether or not they're going to vote for the person who can understand why are you going to, deny dreamers who are kids that did nothing wrong. They were children. They are very young adults. Parents have paid taxes. Why can't they participate fairly like everybody else? Why penalize them? What's the interest in wanting to penalize these kids?
Well, and in terms of the difference between, Maryland, where it was passed by our General Assembly and signed into law, but then a referendum, if the Attorney General in Virginia, as he's gone ahead and just, implemented that, so I take it can't go back to referendum. That's basically, you can't referendum.
You can't referendum an
here.
Attorney General's decision, which you could referendum, though, is once the law is passed,
Right,
whether or not. Right. But what I'm saying is that the legislature, if they really wanted to pick a fight, is pass a law to say that, period, these people are not entitled.
But you don't think they want to pick that fight, you're saying?
Well, that's what I'm thinking is you really don't want to pick that fight. And if you do pick that fight, that's, I think, something that the Republican leadership nationally, not just states, but nationally, have to seriously take a look at this, because it could seriously cost them in a lot of states and even in the,
we've got about 45 seconds left.
national elections.
So this is one of the divisive issues within the
one
Republican
of the
Party.
biggest divisive
Well,
issues
and
that's it's almost rivaling abortion.
Well, it's extremely significant too, because it's a large portion of these people are Latino, and that is, the growing demographic in the county and growing numbers of voters.
And they own the fact that Obama has not been able to do anything about immigration. The Republicans own the fact that they've been able to block it and stall it. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the
So this
presidential
may
election.
get kind of played out at the state level more than the national level to some degree.
Sure. It will. And the states have the right to implement a lot of laws that have to do with everybody's life. We always think that the federals do, but it's a lot of states, so it's important. Our state elections are important. Go vote!
That's the last word. Thanks, Mariana. Appreciate it. It's a very important topic. Jane.
Yes.
We move from dreamers to the budget dream.
Nightmares.
So to set this up a little bit, we've got the county's budget is determined by the county council. Over half of the budget, it goes typically to our school system.
Right.
And that's where we are. Fill in the details for us.
Well, we have, we've had a lot of publicity in the last few years about a term called maintenance of effort, which is basically the fact that if a county funds a school system at a certain level, a per pupil level, that they need to, in order to get state funding in the future, they need to maintain that level of support.
So they got to meet that floor.
They have to meet that floor, so that anytime a county funds at a level higher than that floor, that becomes the new floor.
Okay.
Unless.
And there's never a provision for there's an important cause for a particular thing, we have to do it this year, one time. That's never considered.
Well, there was this waiver process, and Montgomery County did not meet maintenance of effort, and so consequently the state passed a law that made it much, much more difficult to not meet maintenance of effort. And so, or if you didn't meet it, to get any kind of waiver allowing you to still get the state
And doesn't
funding.
the state realize that could discourage school districts from doing special things they need?
Right, exactly.
Why would they want to do that?
Well, I think that part of it was to spank Montgomery County, but also some of it is because Montgomery County was unusual, in the 90s and the first decade of this century, in that we routinely went above maintenance of effort, whereas there were other counties in the state that really did need that as kind of the carrot and the stick, because they weren't necessarily so inclined to fund education, so you had to give them this incentive, like, okay, if you don't keep this support, you're not going to get these state dollars.
But it's a great thing for the rest of the state, because Montgomery County funds the state. And so by making sure that we have so high, then all the state monies that we put in aren't coming back to us.
They're going to the other.
And so long as other counties keep their own funding down, they get to be at Montgomery County's feeding trough.
I see what you mean by spanking Montgomery County. Yeah.
So is there some division within the council about how much to do and whether to go above the maintenance of effort?
I don't really know. That's yet to be seen where the council stands on it. But the school system did send a budget over to the council that was significantly above maintenance of effort, and Ike's budget kind of came in the middle, that it was above maintenance of effort, but not everything.
County Executive Leggett.
Yes, County Executive Leggett.
Right.
And so, you know, he split the difference a little bit, so it's in the council's hands now. What was interesting is that the county executive sent over this whole package of budget adjustments earlier this week. That was basically a lot of things that the council had put on the reconciliation list.
Okay.
The county executive is now endorsing them, but the question is if you, you know,
paying
what
Peter
they're
to pay.
doing with school funding will
Right.
determine whether there's any money to
For
to
other
address-
needs.
For other
So
needs.
are there
right.
school funding issues in his request?
There are some things that impact schools. I mean, there's some differences in capital spending, and less the amount, more the timing of it. Also, more of replacing some bond funding with some other things. I mean, they're sort of more technical things.
Can we get off the
But-
budget real quick?
right.
1 second. Turn this a little bit. Superintendent Starr has been in the news a couple things. One, he was on NPR yesterday or this morning, where he said he didn't care, he could care less about state testing. In fact, he didn't want teachers to do anything with state tests, which was very interesting. The other thing is the study that came out that showed that Montgomery County schools are incredibly segregated. How does the budget and other things, what are your thoughts on those two subjects? And how
Well,
do we
the
address those?
segregation is not really news. I mean, maybe once you quantify it and you see it there in the numbers in black and white, you know, maybe that, you know, makes it more concrete. But it's really a function of where people are living. And we know that there's, you know, broad differences in different parts of the county. You know that there are some zip codes where, you know, majority
solve
of
it?
people wait.
We've only got about a minute for these topics.
Well, one of the things that the county has been doing is, you know, the school system to, you know, more equalize things. I mean, they have done some things like creating some magnet schools that pulls kids from, you know, maybe we call wealthier or higher achieving schools into schools that, you know, could use an increase in focus on achievement. They also basically have funding patterns where schools in areas more highly impacted by poverty get higher funding levels. They have smaller class sizes. So there are things that are in place. I mean, the same way you were saying Montgomery County funds the rest of the state, I've heard people in Potomac frequently say they're funding Silver Spring.
I think, but I think, you know what, with regard to segregation or whatever, I think the most important thing is that all the schools in Montgomery County be good schools,
Okay.
and so that everyone's got an equal opportunity to a good education.
What a great last word. Thanks, Jane. We'll be right back after these messages. And we're back. Stuart Rosenthal, welcome back.
Thank you, Don.
You are always a high point of the show.
Thank you.
So the May Beacon, I remember last year you had a series on housing. This year you have the
That's
same
right.
series?
Every spring
Okay.
in May, June, and July, we have a pull-out section, which is dealing with housing and home care options. There's so many subjects and so many issues for people, especially over 50. There are, of course, those of us who want to stay in our homes as long as we can and make that a suitable place for growing old in. There are those who are looking at the many options out there to move, assisted living, long-term care, continuing care, retirement communities,
Miami.
whatnot. Miami, yes. even Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico,
Right, there are all
Costa
kinds
Rica.
of, yes,
Yes.
indeed.
Well, they got better weather. I mean, that alone.
That's important.
The weather is super
Right,
important after
right.
what we've been through.
So there are a lot of different subjects that we try to cover in these sections. So I just encourage people to pick it up and pull it out, save it if you don't need it this moment. But I think you'll find something for everybody in there.
What are you most excited in the housing in this particular month? Because the next couple months we're going to
Right.
talk about what's June and July issues as well. But what's
Well, there's
particularly
a
interesting
very nice, heartwarming story. We're talking about Virginia. There's a story from a caregiving situation. There was an older man who his wife had passed away, and he needed care, and he couldn't be. The family didn't want to have a stranger, so his grandson, who is a surfing instructor in a lake. Resort kind of guy, he said, well, come live with me. And so now the grandfather's living with his grandson in the lake house, and they go water skiing and all kinds of things together. They're both finding it to be a wonderful experience. And the son had more time to be able to take care of his granddad, so that's a
Well, it's
beautiful
kind of
thing.
like how it used to be traditionally, wasn't
Right.
it?
It's so
Mixed
odd nowadays.
generations.
Nowadays it looks like something very strange. People
But
don't
I
talk
think
about that very
it works
often.
better than relying on
It
institutions
can.
or
It
strangers.
can.
I mean, unless of course you have Alzheimer's or some other kind
Right.
of, problem that really requires professional attention more 24/7. But, in our Latin American countries,
Right, the extended family.
extended
Right,
family steps
right.
up.
So you're talking about health stories too.
Well,
you
I want to
mentioned
hear about
earlier.
those health
Yeah,
stories.
Yeah. So alcoholism. I just want to talk about this not as a serious problem, but just as the regular people around us who, like us, who drink a glass of wine now and then, something with dinner, something before going to bed.
Whoa. Don't blow what I think is true, which is the glass of wine a day is important to my
Keeps the
health.
doctor away.
That's where
Let me-
okay.
let
that's
me
what-
keep drinking
I'm-
my glass of
I'm
wine,
starting
Stuart.
with
Don't
that
kill me.
because people now tell us, we read this all the time, that red wine in particular is good for your heart. Resveratrol is very good for you, and you should even take it in pill form and stuff. But the question is, how much is too much? So one of our readers wrote and said, I've been having a glass of wine with dinner every night and then a glass before I go to bed. My husband thinks I'm overdoing it. Isn't that crazy? And the answer was, well, maybe not. Because when they say that a woman can have up to 3 drinks a day and a man can have up to 4 drinks a day, and that varies because of our body size and water content and such,
And hopefully
that
you're not
doesn't
driving.
mean every day of the week. If you're having
Okay.
2 glasses of wine every day of the week, then you're already, as a woman, you're exceeding the limit, because women have, there's a weekly limit too, which I didn't know about. I just
Okay.
learned
Oh, I didn't know
7 drinks a week for women and 14 drinks a week for men.
Okay.
So it's
you
really
were
1 or 2 drinks
You
a
were
day,
saying
not
earlier that
3
a
to
glass
4.
of wine is actually 2 glasses.
You
Depends
go,
on the
you
size.
go into a restaurant, now,
Yeah.
and you see these huge big wine glasses, and they fill them up, halfway, a little more than halfway.
They never fill mine
That's
up.
more than a standard
Well,
drink
my
of
dad
wine.
has a set of wine glasses that each glass can fit an entire bottle.
But
Those
usually you
only
just
come out
do
on
this
special
much.
occasions.
I should think so.
But yeah, it is true. Well, so a lot of people do think that, okay,
Yeah.
if they're only having, say, 3 or 4 drinks a day, but every day, that there's just no way that
That's
they
not
could
good
have
for
a
your liver, that's
problem.
not good
Yeah.
So
for your
this is
heart,
what the
right.
medical establishment is coming saying now in
That's
terms
right.
of
And
guidelines.
people have to be a little more careful about how much they drink
Yeah,
and what they
yeah.
consider to be,
Yeah.
A new rule of
serving.
moderation. We've also got moderation in cholesterol. New
Well,
rules.
actually, it's funny. It's the opposite in cholesterol. Now, it looks like almost everybody should be taking cholesterol drugs.
Wow.
There are new guidelines out from the American Heart Association and the American Cardiology Institute, I guess it's called, that now take into account not only your cholesterol levels now, but also whether you smoke or not and what your blood pressure is and all those things. And by broadening the things they're looking at to see how you're doing, they are now recommending that if you're over 60, I think it is, 87% of men who are not currently on statins ought to be, or at least who consider
So what
being on
about the
statins.
side effect of the statins? and
See,
stuff?
it's not even addressed. See, the guidelines came out and said you should talk to your doctor if you're over 60 and you have, you meet these guidelines, and almost everybody does nowadays.
Wow.
So there are other things you can do. Of course, you can take care of being overweight, and you can
Right.
take care of your smoking by yourself. That's a behavioral change. But-
Meditate for your blood pressure, maybe a little bit.
Right. But the guidelines are saying, recommend a pill, because that's easy, and people will take it.
All right,
So
we-
it's a question.
30 seconds left. Any fun fact coming out of the Beacon that's going to want us to
Oh,
open it up?
interesting story on the island of Vieques off of Puerto Rico. I think it's pronounced.
Right.
Is that right?
Okay.
Used to be a bombing
Right.
Yeah.
site.
Right.
Now it's a phenomenal beach resort kind of place, and all the places that used to be full of shrapnel
Wow.
or whatever are now been cleaned up, and they're very nice, and they're very, very quiet.
No explosive behavior.
Probably not.
All the seniors are moving
you
there.
can, you
Senior
can lay
living.
out on the beach and not worry about the Navy bombing you, right?
Exactly. That's right.
Stuart, thanks. We look forward to having you next month and more on the housing and everything else in the Beacon.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Tim, welcome back.
Thanks. Good to be here.
So one thing that within the disability community, the adult disability community, we forget as we're talking about care and everything else, is that folks are out there working, and they need to be working. They want to be working. The minimum wage impacts the community, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
and actually, we're not talking about persons with disability. It does impact them, but we're talking about our employees who support people with disability. And so, as the minimum, as you know, the county passed a minimum wage, and it's going to go up to $11.50 in about 4 years. And the state just passed their own minimum wage, and it's going to go up to $10.10, I think.
Right.
And so, we have the higher rate, but part of this whole process is most of our funding and Jewish Foundation for Group Home and the ARC and our sister agencies comes from the state and the county. And so in the state passing this, they built into that bill that we would get increases over the next 4 years so that we can pay our employees
Good.
more. And so many of them do make more than $11.50 an hour, but not all of them. And so, it raises that whole group of employees. And
Sure.
so I think it's a good example of it really helping us in a positive way. And some people have talked about minimum wage as, these are entry-level jobs, and it's not just entry-level jobs for us. And so it really is going to help in a meaningful way.
Well, and entry-level jobs are as important as any other,
Sure.
and so they should be compensated in a way that they can meet their expenses and bills.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. So anyway,
It's good the
we're-
state's putting its money where its mouth is.
and the county as well. I mean, part of the reconciliation list, there's some requests we have in there, but Mr. Leggett has also put money in there. So we're pleased with both the county and the state, what they're doing, so that we can, our goal is on average to pay 130% of minimum wage. And we are there with 725, but we want to be there with 1150 as well. And I think we can get there with this legislation.
Can I ask you, in terms of your own residents of the group homes, they often work in grocery stores or other kinds of
Right,
places
right.
in entry-level or minimum wage jobs. Is this going to help or hurt them? Maybe there won't be as much money available because, or fewer people will get the jobs because
Well,
of the higher
I think
cost.
it'll be mixed. I mean, I think that many of them always have to watch their income because they get public benefits, and they have to make sure that they don't lose those benefits. And so this will up that, but not all of them are unmedicated, and so I think it'll help them as well. It's the same kind of tension within the general population, but I think for the most part it will help them, but there will be some
Would it
downsides.
Now,
change
one
in
second
the-
here, and then come back. Helping us to learn more about Jubilee, there's a website, I believe.
JubileeMD.org, and we have our big event coming up in a week.
We're going to talk about that in a second,
Okay.
just right after.
No, I was just going to ask, so then it's important that the minimum wage be raised federally, because then it would help with the benefit determinations, right?
I don't know if that would help. I mean, I think we need to address that benefit determination. I don't know that the minimum wage would affect Medicaid eligibility is usually what we're looking at, and I don't think the minimum wage would affect that. But I think
Okay.
Medicaid reform would be a good thing,
Okay,
so that there would be more incentives for people to work and earn more money.
right.
What, you don't think about all these issues a lot of times when when we're talking just blindly about raise the minimum wage or other issues, that the impact that comes down on nonprofit providers.
Yeah, I
like
mean, it just
yourself.
means the world to us because those are the bread and butter people for us. If they don't do a good job, we don't do a good job, and supporting them and making sure they have a living wage is one of our number one priority, and so this is going to help us a lot.
Now, your short-term priority is roasting a former Redskin quarterback.
Yes, Joe Theismann. So
I thought it was Joe Theismann. What was this Theismann? He was in college. I remember
Well,
reading
I'm sure
at
that'll
Notre
be
Dame.
that'll
It was Joe
be
Theismann.
that'll be material for the roast, I'm sure. So we have Larry Michaels as our MC,
Okay.
and Mark
The
Mosley,
voice of the Redskins.
Jeff Bostic, and Doug Williams are
Okay.
all roasters, and they all know each other well, and they're all friends, and so it'll be in good fun. But I'm sure there'll be some interesting stories.
The
that come out of it.
championship days in the 80s.
Oh, those were the days.
These players, the Hogs, and
Absolutely.
and all that. So, what are you hoping? I mean, by bringing these folks together, you've got these symbols of athleticism, and working to support the adult disability community. I mean, a lot of symbolism there. I mean, that we're all one community, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. I mean, that's important, and I think just fitness and nutrition. I mean, I think it's a priority for us at Jubilee, and I know for a lot of places, both the people that we serve and our employees to really work at exercise and nutrition. And Joe Theismann is an example of that. And these folks, they have done incredible things for their bodies, and they really work at that, and we can learn something from
You watch Joe Theismann on TV, you think, he looks so fit. You think that he could go ahead and get under center and go and maybe play better than some of these players who are out there these days in the NFL.
Has a lot of wisdom, I'm sure. I'm not sure he quite has the arm yet.
He may have the arm, he may not have the stamina.
Or the knee.
Or the thigh bone.
Well, yeah, the leg. Yeah, I was at the game.
Yeah,
I-
everyone went, oh.
I was at that
what
game. I
happened?
never
Yeah.
saw the replay, which I'm very happy
Yeah.
about with Lawrence Taylor. A couple seconds left. Are you confident we're making progress in the disability community in the county?
Yes, I think so. I think so, both in the employment sector as well as helping people find new and interesting places to live.
Okay, well, perfect. Well, that's the last word for
thank
this segment. It's the last word for this show. I want to thank all of you for joining me today for this show. And I want to thank all of you in the viewing audience for joining us for this week's edition of Montgomery Week in Review. I'm Don Mooers, and I invite you to join us next week at this very same time.